Sometimes Christians use words that other people don't. One of the most common, and most important, is the word salvation. Of course, when we think of salvation, we think of heaven, that we're saved from our sin and become right with God. And this happens through the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. But is there more to salvation than just heaven? We'll talk about it in a few seconds. When I was growing up, it seemed like everyone had at least some understanding of what it means for Jesus to be our Savior. Now, people don't use that word very much these days, but essentially it means someone who rescues someone else from a hopeless situation. But of course, there are a lot of people today who don't believe that they need to be saved, or they don't know what they might need to be saved from. Of course, life isn't perfect, but it's going okay, nothing they can't really handle by themselves. You see, I think sometimes we are so focused on all the material parts of our life, like our health, finances, and family, that many people don't give a lot of thought to spiritual things or to the existential questions that humans have asked since the beginning of time. These are questions like, what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be a good person? What's wrong with the world? What's the purpose of life? See, we've never lived at a time where it was easier to ignore or distract ourselves from these questions, as long as things are going well. When things are going well, we can have the illusion that we're in control of life, that we can manage things on our own. But it's when things aren't going well, when we experience a financial or health crisis, that we realize that we are not in control and we can't handle things ourselves. It's people who are caught in the throes of addiction or hopeless situations who understand that they need help. Sometimes that means practical help, like healing or financial help. But when our lives are exposed that way, we realize that the problem goes deeper. And it's at that time that we realize that we've been avoiding these questions. But then, when we take time to think about the answers, that's when we realize that we are not in control as we thought we were, and also that we're not quite as good as we thought we were. In fact, we might even feel a bit lost, like our life has lost its meaning. But this also gets to the very heart of what we mean by Savior. You might have already heard that to be saved means to be forgiven for the bad things you've done. The Bible tells us that Jesus died on a Roman cross as a substitute for the punishment that we deserve. And that's true. But salvation actually means even more than that. Jesus is our Savior because of his life, death, and resurrection. First, we find that his life gives us purpose and direction. When we pattern ourselves after Jesus' teaching and his own way of life, then we become what we were created to be. Second, his death on the cross, even when he was innocent, pays the price for our failure in the past. And now we don't have to be consumed by guilt or wondering whether we're good enough for God to accept us. He already showed us that we are. Finally, his resurrection shows us our future. We have to admit that there's a lot of pain and struggle in this life. And even good people don't always receive good things here. But Jesus' resurrection validates what Jesus taught and did, and it reminds us that this life is not all there is, that whatever suffering we've experienced here, there is an eternity waiting for us that makes the pain that we experience now pale in comparison to the joy that we'll have when we see God face to face. Jesus saves us from our past by helping us leave it in the past. He saves us in the present by giving our lives purpose and direction. He saves us into a new future with God that will look much more like what God intended for us. And so, what do you need to do? Well, it's more than just saying a little prayer and then getting on with your life. First, it's about trusting that Jesus is who he said he is. Second, it's about taking on the way of Jesus. Put your faith in Jesus enough to know that you are loved by God and then become his apprentice. Learn what he taught and then follow his way of life. A great way to do that is to become a part of a church community that will help you learn to live and to love like Jesus. And as you do that, more and more you'll begin to experience the peace that only Jesus can give. If you're interested in talking more about this, please click on the link to send me an email. I'd be happy to chat with you more about what it means to follow Jesus.